Welcome to the Stories Are Soul Food podcast with your hosts, Brian Kohl and best-selling author, N.D. Wilson. This audio is brought to you by Canon Books and Great Homeschool Conventions.
Welcome to Stories Are Soul Food. We are here to talk about food for souls.
Yep.
/stories.
Specifically today, I wanted to ask you the question, do you call your books Christian fiction? And of course, that's a loaded question, but...
I'm not a Christian rapper. I'm a rapper who's Christian.
Right. And see, that's why every time I hear someone doing that little move, it makes me want to say, yes, of course. Canon Books is a Christian publisher. But as soon as we say that, it comes along with a number of baggages that I wondered if you felt that way when people ask, do you write Christian fiction?
Yes and no. So, of course, absolutely. At the same time, I do understand what people are rebelling against, and they're rebelling against the label of Christian as a market tag.
Yeah.
So it's not a question of, are you apostate or are you not apostate? It's, do you identify as part of this market?
Right.
Like, are you specific to this market? Are you in this particular niche? Are you in this ghetto? Do you belong on this shelf?
Yeah, because if I said, are you a Christian author? The answer would be,
well, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And my books are all coherent and consistent creations from that point of view, from my Christian authorship. So, yeah, I write Christian books. But no, I do not also. Yes, there's an either or fallacy. It's kind of latent in there. You're one or the other. Doesn't make sense. But there's also just an equivocation on the word. And the word is being used in two different ways. One meaning, are these good? Are they true, good, and beautiful? Are they consistent with scripture and the gospel? Yeah, they are. Do you hold yourself up to the standards, the objective standards of truth found in scripture when you're writing your books? Yes, I do. Are my books coherent and consistent with that? Yes, they are. But are they sold exclusively in Christian bookstores? Are they printed? Are they published by Christian houses? No, they're not.
Yeah.
Are they marketed as food for the choir? No, they are not. And so when people say Christian books or Christian publishing, they tend to mean a book, written by a Christian author for a Christian audience, talking about Christian themes specifically, or including the gospel specifically. So I have written books that are that way. I have written books that are specifically for Christians, Notes from the Tilted World, Death by Living, talking about Christianity. So yeah, they're Christian books in that I'm trying to be a good Christian in my writing of them, but they're also Christian in that they are targeted at that audience, at that marketplace. So in those two senses, those books are Christian books. But for Ashdown Burials or 100 Cupboards or Lee Pike Ridge or any of these other things, are there Christian themes? Yes. Does the writing, does the plot, does it all come from my Christian perspective? Yes.
Yeah.
Will you find Christian typology? Yes. Outlaws of Time, are there messianic themes? Yep. Are there characters named explicitly after the disciples? Yep. Yeah, there are.
But would a secular kid notice it?
No. Again, Christian kids don't even.
Right.
That's the soul food piece. I'm trying to make stuff that's wholesome and edifying and enriching.
Right. So it's almost a bigger question. Would God like your stories?
Yeah.
Which sounds like such a proud thing to say, but really does seem what an artist needs to ask.
That's the goal. I hope so. And the other thing would be, do your books honor God? And you'd say, I hope so. I hope they do. I'm trying to.
Yeah.
So with all my books, I'm trying to honor God.
That would be the most significant challenge. If someone said, hey, I don't think your books honor God, that would be something that you would have an opinion on.
Yeah, I would be upset. But either because they were right or because they were wrong and falsely slandering me, I would just be upset.
Right.
But when people say Christian book, Christian album, Christian anything, what they mean is an explicit expression of Christianity for Christians, by Christians, for Christians.
Right.
And that's not what I'm doing.
And as it's a podcast about kids' stories. There are huge Christian publishers, Zondervan and Thomas Nelson, but their kids' imprints don't do anything. Why is that? Why is it that secular publishers are the ones who get to tell stories to kids?
Yeah. Well, it's
Because I was looking at Thomas Nelson, and their top hits for kids are Dude Perfect, 101 trick shots, that you can do. That's what's popping up as their Christian stories. Or Zondervan is nonstop Jesus storybook Bible. Sally Lloyd Jones to the moon and back.
Yep.
To me, when we're looking at the distinction, do we look for Christian fiction? If I were going to go try to find a book for my kid, no way. In that sense, in the market genre, that's not the pool that I would swim in to try to find something for my kids to read. And that, in one sense, made me a little upset. But then in another one, it's consistent. We're not in that genre.
Yeah, it's not even a genre; it's a market.
Yeah, sorry, market.
But my grandfather ran Christian bookstores. My dad worked in Christian bookstores. I remember being taken into Christian bookstores and being taken to the fiction section.
Yeah,
and being told pick something out. And my grandfather ran a good Christian bookstore, so there was good stuff over there, which meant there was C.S. Lewis.
Right.
And the Sugar Creek Gang. There wasn't much else. And there was a ton of missionary biographies.
Right.
And Jungle Book. There's some Jungle Book.
Right.
So, there's fun stuff, but it was seen as like, there has to be an explicit moral. There has to be, there has to be a Sunday school. It has to be Sunday schoolable. And overwhelmingly, think of it this way. Are my novels Christian curriculum? Like, no.
Yeah.
They're not curriculum. That's not what they are. They're meals for imaginations. Are they meals for imaginations that honor God? I sure hope so. That's the goal. But I don't exist in that marketplace. I really don't exist in the quote unquote Christian marketplace.
Was there a time when you decided, no, I'm not going to try to exist in that marketplace? Or is it just, what goes into that decision for an author?
Let's pull back the curtain a little bit, shall we? One of the only things I've heard a couple things back about this podcast since we've launched. I haven't been paying close attention, but a few people have reached out directly, and I've heard that people still want us to talk about VeggieTales. They want to have an entire season on like Harry Potter, us discussing all the Christian themes and so on, and whether or not it's great. So, picking a bone there. And then they also really want to hear more scuttlebutt about behind the scenes of the publishing industry.
So you're scratching one of the three
Which itches. I thought, okay, that was we talked about that. I don't remember in which episode. But
Outlaws, not Outlaws, 100 Cupboards episode.
Yeah. So we talked about that a little bit there. And I've heard repeatedly from people who are like, do more and do more there. So this just came up naturally. In my aspiring author brain, I sort of assumed the publishing world was like baseball, where I thought, I want to be a professional author. I want to make a living as an author. So I should probably play in the minor leagues. I should probably, start small and work my way up. And so I tried. And the way I tried was that I pitched a bunch of work to Christian publishers, and they were incoherent, didn't understand what they were doing, what they were for, or what made a Christian book. The same thing exists now when people struggle over what is a faith film.
Right.
Like what is a Christian film? What is a faith film? Or what is a quote unquote faith adjacent film? Things like that.
Is that something they talk about now?
Yeah.
Faith adjacent. Does that mean it doesn't irritate people of faith?
No, I think it's it's a faith film without a direct gospel presentation.
Oh, okay.
That's oversimplification, but still. So I thought I'm going to pitch to Christian publishers. I'm actually going to even pitch to small Christian publishers. I'm like medium small. I'm going to try to go play some minor league ball, work on my craft, hopefully build a readership, and then get
that 10-day contract. Wait, or is that NBA?
Whatever. Yeah. I then try to work my way up to the major leagues. And so I was working on cupboards, and early pitches of cupboards went out. 100 cupboards went to Christian publishers. So
did you do Christian agents first, or did you go straight to publishers?
I had a Christian agent.
Yeah.
There's a Christian agent, and actually even there, I went to Christian publishers, then went to a Christian agent, went to some more Christian publishers, then fired the Christian agent. It was this whole saga. But I was over when it came to Christian publishers.
Okay.
I got rejected by all of them.
Minor leagues wasn't playing.
Oh yeah, they were not interested. And they were overwhelmingly not interested because this is not Christian fiction, is what I was being told.
Oh, okay.
It's like, but is Narnia? Yep. Because we know there's a long established tradition of Christians loving the Narnia Chronicles. So
it's safe.
Yeah. So yeah, of course that's Christian. And we would love to publish something like Narnia. And we'd have these dialogues. We would love to publish something like that. And so I was like, okay, so this is kind of American Narnia with 100 cupboards.
I'm having a hard time seeing how you could have. It's very like all the food things you've explained that go
Right.
into making Narnia
Yeah.
seem like they go into 100
No,
cupboards.
they do. Now, admittedly, the first book of Narnia, the Narnia Chronicles, has an explicit
right.
crucifixion scene, has an
And
explicit
resurrection, yeah.
Yeah, it has an explicit Easter, explicit passion. So I was not there. But the rest of the Narnia Chronicles, I'm more lined up with, in terms of, a lot more similarities there. So anyway, I got a lot of no's. I got rejected by every single one of them. And I was, oh man, that's kind of a bummer. Then I had an accidental situation where a rough draft that I had not read got sent out to a bunch of publishers in New York. And I hadn't read through it yet.
Oh, wait, you typed it up and not read it?
So I got an email.
Okay.
I got an email and it was saying, "Hey, what are you working on?" And I said, "Oh, I actually just finished this rough draft. I'm, here, check it out." And it got circulated.
Oh,
Just went out to like. So I made the mistake of attaching it to an email, and then it went out. It's like 10 publishing houses, some big number of New York houses, and I was like, trash, And I already had pitched. I'd already pitched. We'd already approached all these Christians who'd already passed on it. So the minor leagues all said, "You don't got what it takes." And I was still thinking of it that way. I wasn't thinking of it in terms of different markets fundamentally. I was thinking, I am a Christian. I am trying to honor God with my fiction. Even nepotistically, like approaching publishers that my dad had worked with and been very successful with in the Christian space, and thinking like, surely you'll give me a shot, right? My dad sold a lot of books for you.
yeah.
Nope. Just nope, nothing. Then my rough draft went out around New York, and we started getting really long, nice rejection letters. And it was kind of funny, like non-rejection letters. So 3-page letters back about what they liked and what they'd love to see. And would you be willing to break it in 2? Would you be willing to do it as a trilogy? Would you be willing to cut it all down into a single volume that's, half this length? Penguin, Random House, they weren't combined at the time. Just a lot of people. The editor of the Harry Potter series being one of them at Scholastic. So we heard lots of complimentary, nice stuff. I was embarrassed. I was really embarrassed that this had gone out there, especially with some of the things they pointed out, where just like, this hurts. This hurts my pride. But I was also kind of astounded. Like, so why is it that these big houses are interested and my own people are not? Like, what is it? And so I bypassed the quote unquote Christian marketplace and wrote up proposals for these different publishers. And then they got the different story there, but they got swapped. So like Random House received the wrong proposal. They received the proposal for Penguin, and vice versa, and stuff like that happened. So it was a whole nightmare. The embarrassment continued.
Okay.
And so that's when I parted ways with my agent at the time after that last confusion.
Shoelaces tied together in multiple ways.
And talked to Aaron Wrench, whom I'd known for a while and knew that he could be a good literary agent, and said, "You should do this." And he said, okay. He thought he'll give it a try. He read a book called How to Be a Literary Agent. And I explained to him, I was like, okay, so these people, it takes forever for them to respond to submissions. So I'm going to give you a first couple chapters of a book, and then you take it out. And then eventually when they respond and ask for the whole manuscript, we'll be in a great situation. So I gave him the first 3 chapters of Lee Pike Ridge, because my goal was to show these publishers who had read this enormously bloated mess of a rough draft of 100 cupboards. I wanted to show them something disciplined so that they would not worry that I could actually discipline a novel. And Lee Pike Ridge had grabbed me by the throat, and I was writing it, quickly. And it had all grabbed me just from the opening sentence, and stuff had kind of carried on from there. So I had 3 chapters written, and I was like, this is going to be a tight standalone novel that I can submit to people, and they'll see I can write a tight standalone novel. They won't be totally horrified by this bloated mess I sent them in this rough draft. Aaron was newish, brand new. So he sends out the first 3 chapters to all these different publishers, especially the 10 publishers who'd shown some kind of niceness about the mess of cupboards that I'd showed them. So he sent out the first 3 chapters, and then heard back really quickly from people that they wanted to see the whole manuscript. And
which you didn't have,
which I did not have, which I had not written. They got back right away.
Oops. Well,
and said, and people were like, "We'd love to see the whole thing." And Aaron told me, because he was out in Idaho, where he still lives, like, "I'm going to be back east in 2 weeks." So I told them I would hand deliver the manuscript in 2 weeks when I'm out there. And I was like, I've not
written
Yeah. Two, I don't remember. 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. I think of it as the entire first draft happened in 3.5 weeks, where I wrote the first 3 chapters in a week and a half. And I wrote the rest of the novel in 2 weeks after Aaron made this big promise. So Aaron promises to all these publishers that he'll have the manuscript for them. And it also turns out that one of the ways, I think this is the case, he at least did this with some novels. I think he did this with the first 3 chapters, that he sent them 3 chapters and he used shrink wrap. He put them in shrink wrap instead of a clip or anything like that. He just got out a hair dryer and he used the shrink wrap and he cinched them into this and sent it to them. And it was just a novelty, like in their stack of manuscripts they're looking at. Here's this shrink wrap thing. And people have an innate need to unwrap stuff, to open stuff. So I got read really fast and they all asked for the total manuscript way ahead of schedule. So I wrote like the Dickens and I was really frustrated and excited, but frustrated that my whole point was to show them something disciplined and tight. And I was having to
do it in 2.5 weeks.
And I had to do it in no time. So I was not done.
Wait, how many words is that a day?
I don't know. It was a lot, especially for me as a rookie author. It was a lot. I think the whole novel, 70,000 words. So
that's a lot of.
So
1,000.
I was,
a lot of 1,000 a night.
Yeah, I was humming along and still trying to figure stuff out because I hadn't planned it all yet. So anyway, Aaron went back east. He was staying with family outside of Philly. And I was writing like mad. He was already out there. He had meetings scheduled like with the editor of the Harry Potter series. He's going in to talk to him about this novel I haven't written yet. And so I was sweating bullets and I pulled a lot of long hours and I emailed him the doc and he, printed it off on his in-laws printer, this manuscript slowly printing all night, something like that. And then he drove into New York, double parked outside of a copy shop, a copy center, ran in there and made copies of this thing and then hand delivered copies to HarperCollins and Scholastic and Random House and just spent the day driving around New York, meeting with bigwigs, slapping hot manuscripts, literally still warm,
very hot,
literally warm manuscripts that I had fired off to him. And very, very shortly after that, we started receiving our first offers. So, and Random House made us a 4-book offer to compete with the other publishers. And I was most inclined at the time to Scholastic and the editor of Harry Potter, but he was, explaining why it was best to do 1 book at a time, in the contract.
Right.
And I'm thinking, how do I pay my bills and support my family? And Random House came with a 4-book offer because they remembered the big bloated mess of 100 Cupboards. So they said, hey, we'd love to buy this one and the 100 Cupboards series to be broken into a trilogy.
Nice.
And I was like, awesome. So that is basically the story of how I ended up not being a Christian author. Where the same book that Random House and Penguin and a lot of other people wanted to buy was something that every single mid-level Christian publisher had a shot at and said, no, thank you. It's not Christian enough. And then that book is now in, 24 languages and is a pretty significant bestseller. And, I'm happy. I'm happy with how it went, but it was not through any kind of sophistication on my part. It was just, I assumed I'm a Christian, I'm an author, I will write in the Christian space. And then it didn't work out. And I ended up successfully writing in Babylon. And now it's changed. The market's changed. It'd be much, much harder for me to break in now as a quote unquote cis white male. But, so I think the Christian industry is changing. It's expanding. Christian publishers are expanding. Obviously, we're involved in Cannonball Books and trying to publish soul food, I've started the Camper Down Writers Kiln to, help other aspiring authors hone their craft so that the world has more storytellers. Mm-hmm. The world needs more soul food. So that means we need more cooks.
Right.
So we're trying to expand, and the market is changing and expanding. The Christian market is different. It's changing radically. Waterbrook Multnomah out of Colorado, they publish the Wing Feather series now. They published the first one and then they let the rest go. And then Andrew self-published them and was really successful. So then they bought them back. And, they're publishing Christian fantasy, but it's just as Christian as I am. It's a different kind of a thing. He's a Christian. He's trying to honor God with his fiction, but it's not a gospel presentation. The typology is there. The themes are there.
Right. So instead of the question of is there an explicit gospel presentation or does it have so-called spiritual elements, the question should be about what it is in every other industry, right? About excellence.
Right. Yeah. Does this honor God? Does this book honor God? And if you're a cook, imagine taking a plate of glorious food out to a table and having somebody say, but is this steak Christian? Is this a Christian steak? That doesn't make any kind of sense. It's not, no, it has not repented. It has not been baptized. Does it honor God? Well, there's a lot of ways it could and a lot of ways it couldn't. Did the whole process honor God? Did you honor God in how you were doing it? Did you have a thankful attitude? Did you do it as unto him, as you're trying to feed people? But it's weird when we come into the arts, it's weird how we do that. We're basically saying, is this Christian curriculum? Is this Christian propaganda? As opposed to, is this a wholesome, edifying meal that honors God and will fuel and feed imaginations?
Yeah. As members of the Protestant tradition, the priesthood of all believers, that idea that all of us can honor God where we are without having to be specifically Christian labeled or ministry in ministry, seems like something that we need to apply broadly.
Yeah. Are you a Christian plumber? Makes sense. Is that plumber a Christian? Yes or no?
Right.
He is or he isn't. Is this plumbing Christian?
Does not.
It does not make sense. Oh, but
you get weird ideas of christening or
but at the same time, it could honor God or it could dishonor God. It could have been done shoddily. It could have been, bad work could have been hidden in the walls.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that could have been done that would dishonor the creator, or the character of the plumber could fail to honor God and how he's billing, how he's keeping track of his hours. There's so many things you could do that would dishonor, or you could be really honest and do a great job and do it unto the Lord, no matter what you're doing. So anyway, it's odd to me. I understand what Lecrae was getting after when he was saying, I'm not a Christian rapper. I'm a rapper who's a Christian. I think that he didn't necessarily have it all thought out, but he was actually correct in what he was, in what he was getting after. Because I don't think if you asked him and said, so you're saying you don't want your songs to honor God? He'd be like, no, of course I do. Yeah, of course I want to honor God in what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm just trying to get out of this little market, this little hole you've put me in.
Right. I bumped into one of our local friends who refinishes floors.
Okay.
At Moscow Building Supply. And he said he's been listening to the podcast, The Stories of Soul Food. And he said everything applies to floors. He said that's how he thinks about floors. As that idea. I think the idea of creating something awesome, and doing it right for people to walk on. It was a weird little conversation, but totally makes sense with this episode now happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it a Christian floor?
Right.
Christian guy honored God with the installation of this floor, and it's beautiful.
Yeah,
as it's underfoot.
And I grabbed this description from one of the big Christian awards. I won't say which one, but it says, do all the elements of the book contribute harmoniously to a total impact of excellence? And although that's kind of a bit of a word salad, I thought excellence, it could be a word. It's a word that's seemingly ignored. I don't know that that's actually part of the conversation as much.
Yeah.
When it comes to the book,
I will say,
as
just
market questions.
To stretch people's brains a little bit, we also have to be willing to point out that some work honors God that has been made by people who are not Christians. So excellence honors God.
Oh, yeah.
Beauty and craft honors God. People, there's basically, let me just put it this way. There are a lot of donkeys out there. There are a lot of Balaam's asses who've actually spoken truth in their creation. Where they've tapped into something they don't comprehend, they themselves don't understand, they themselves don't live up to, and yet there it is. And other places, it's they might understand a little bit of it, but they miss a lot. And if you move into film, it's even more common because there's so many different personalities involved in the creation of a film that different themes can emerge and come out and be brought out in the editing that was not in the writing. And you can have a script that was God hating get spun pretty effectively into a more God honoring place, which is really weird. It's a weird thing that God does where he co-ops, he just steals work from people to put common grace in the world. There's a lot of artistic narrative creation that is helpful and wholesome out there that was not intended to be.
Yeah.
It was just intended to be popular or to get somebody credit, vanity, whatever, an award, and it turns out to be, a powerful and moving meal.
Yeah. So common grace would be an aspect of natural revelation, right?
Yeah.
God's goodness in the world.
The world is the way he made it.
Right.
And, as many people have said before, a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while.
Yeah.
And so you'll see it shine.
Yeah.
You can see stuff shine through.
Yeah.
And sometimes in movies that are not watchable or books that aren't recommendable, where it's like, wow, this particular section shines, is phenomenal. I wrote an author once of a big successful literary novel and told him I really enjoyed the specific themes of redemption and Ecclesiastes. And I said, I think the book is truly Solomonic, in these particular themes. And he was very confused.
No, really?
Yeah.
That was not what he was shooting for.
He was complimented and grateful, but, I had to explain it to him, like kind of what he had done. And it felt right. He was playing by ear and it felt right to him. And it was, it was beautiful.
That's cool.
And no, I'm not gonna recommend the book because there's a lot of other parts of the book that are not beautiful. But but it was weird. It was a weird shining piece that came through. And you see that in a lot of things. I think of Slumdog Millionaire that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a pretty potent story thematically that a ton of people were involved in who would have had no knowledge of that or desire to do it, and yet it came through. And one of the reasons why it resonated so powerfully and was so popular and huge at the time was because of it, because that truth was there. So anyway, Christian books, Christian films, unfortunately, we have cheapened the faith by, I think, using the name of the faith as a market brand. And that is unfortunate.
And it's become a market brand for what is non-offensive rather than what is
often
true,
what is by Christians for Christians and is lowest common denominator vanilla.
Yeah.
Just sort of like the flavor that offends the fewest and is made by believers for believers and can be sold in stores for believers and under categories online and filters for believers. And, is a little ghetto.
Too nice. Is it too nice? Is that what it is? Or is it just
I have a more like philosophical issue. I wouldn't say Christian fiction is too nice without talking about a specific book or a specific author, because I think it's too broad a brush. I think the category is bad.
Okay.
The category is bad. And imagine walking into it. If the world were such that there were bookstores, imagine walking into a giant bookstore and seeing a section called God honoring and a section called God dishonoring.
That make things pretty easy, honestly.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? It'd be handy. But there would be a ton of Christian books in the God dishonoring shelves.
The shack. Here's to you, the shack.
A ton of them would be over there. And if you walked over to the God honoring section, you would find some surprises. Be like, wow, does this guy know he honored God? Is he okay with that? Probably not.
But too bad.
Because
God made him. His creator is fine with
because
what
he was a musician working with harmonies, which are built into the world, and God made them. So he found them. He pulled them out.
When Solomon built the temple, Hiram, king of Tyre, is the one who made, like, you do the best cedars, the biggest cedar. So Hiram ends up, being responsible for.
He got the bid
for the temple of God. Yeah,
which is funny.
Yeah, it is.
But anyway, it is. I object to the market tag in its entirety. And I think we as consumers and we as parents should be thinking about, how do we hand our kids stories that help them honor God?
Yeah.
And that actually weirdly includes, like we talked about before, books that don't. It's like they have to build up an immune system. They have to actually be able to resist and identify problems.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean your kids only read books that honor God. It means that you need to work to have your kids honor God in how and what they read. And sometimes they'll be reading books by Philistines, by Goliath, and they have to learn how to engage.
Yeah. So don't ask, is my book list for my kids full of Christian books? But instead, is my reading process with my kids Christian?
Am I honoring God with my reading process, with my parenting process, with my engagement with my kids? Am I training them to honor God as readers, and how they consume? Not do I have a brand loyalty where I only consume one type of thing. Right. I will only consume stuff that affirms me in my perspective. Like, no, you have to be able to resist. You have to learn resistance and engagement as well.
Well, I think that's a great takeaway, along with no minor leagues first, shoot straight for the majors.
Go for who will take you. I mean, that's what I was trying to do. Like, who can I play for? If I were getting into the industry right now, I would be emailing Cannonball Books, honestly. It's
Right.
if I were trying to write right now, that's where I'd be going. I'd be existing in the Christian subculture, which is different than a Christian marketplace.
Right.
And that's because the gatekeepers are more rigorous, shall we say. The
Increasingly
immunities of Babylon are a little more active these days than they once were. And consumers have kind of like retrained, rehabituated based on the death of bookstores and other things to try to find good stuff, wherever they
Right.
can. And they don't give a rip whether New York has approved of it.
Right.
Why would they? New
Well-
York has lost credibility. So
You're speaking music to my ears. We
Yeah.
could go on and on
Yeah.
with the authors that we've talked about why it's better to publish with a smaller publisher, but that's probably a little more.
you signed another author today that made me happy.
Yeah, we did.
So another MFA candidate from Camperdown. It's going to be publishing with Cannonball, which makes me very happy.
Yeah, her manuscript was great. I can't wait to start the editorial process on it.
So anyway, it's here's to you, Gwen. Way
Cheers.
to go. The rest of you will be seeing a novel from Gwen Burrow pretty soon.
Yeah.
But Winter King. I mean, when Christine was, she's talked to agents. She's had New York agents. She's been in that world already, even though she wasn't published there. She was active in that world, and I think she could still see success there, which would be great. But at the same
Right.
time, I was the one encouraging her, go to the places where they have the same agenda that you do to
Yeah.
try to refine your fiction into a God-honoring, soul-feeding, imagination boosting book.
Yeah.
As opposed to getting into a relationship with an editor who's opposed to you as a human fundamentally and to your agenda and trying to work with them.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway,
Yep.
Cannonball Books, there's that plug. This episode has been sponsored by Cannonball Books.
Doom, doom, doom.
Perfect.
Love it.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Stories Are Soul Food podcast. Don't forget that if you're looking for kids' books on audio, the Canon app is the place to find them. Find stories like Christine Cohen's Winter King, Brave Ollie Possum by the Babylon Bee's own Ethan Nicole, and George MacDonald's The Princess series. Download and subscribe to the Canon app today.